Hola, bienvenidos. My name is Danielle Siembieda. I'm from the Leonardo, the International Society for Art, Sciences, and Technology. We're very excited to be here today to celebrate Leonardo's 50th anniversary with the radio, television, live with Uruguay, Mexico, Bologna, and all over the world. There's actually 3 dates we'll be doing this celebration today. And the next one will be July 27th and then November 22nd with an in-person event 19 through 23 of November. So I hope you will be able to join us today and at these subsequent events because we'll continue to have the discussion. We're very excited to be here and create a dialogue and discourse. So I want to, first of all, thank everyone who's supported this virtual symposium. This is a group effort, and we're very pleased to have it. I'm going to read off some of the names of the organizations and some of the people who had a lot to do with putting this together. This is organized by Mia Cultural in Uruguay and supported by the National Network of Mexico, as CUDI, C-U-D-I, and Uruguay. RAU, and we count on the collaboration from the National Network in Colombia, Chile, Brazil, and also special thanks to Luis Cardenas, the Managing Director, and Mark Ubran, CFO of Clara Network, Clemente Establa Biology Research Institute, the Public Translation Department for English and Portuguese, and the School of the Republic. And thanks to all the student volunteers. And of course, thanks to Delma Rodriguez, who put all of this together, who is the brain trust behind this. So thank you guys very much. And we're going to have this session where I will be a short presentation and then introducing you to the other participants who will create more of a discussion and dialogue, and there'll be time for questions and answers afterwards. Okay, so do you see the presentation on the screen? The slideshow? Okay, perfecto, gracias. Okay, I'm gonna go, I mentioned I'm with Leonardo, but I'll explain to you what Leonardo is about. So next slide. La próxima. Sorry, can you move the slide to the next one? Thank you. And I'm going to start with a little context and history about Leonardo. Next slide. So the practice of artists and scientists working together is not new. Even prior to Leonardo da Vinci, which our name is after, there were centuries of cross patterns, algorithms, and mediums between the artists and scientists. Those 2 disciplines were merged together for centuries before they were separated. Next slide. In the 20th century, it defined separate paths for the different disciplines. So that's where you started to see psychology in its own category, art in its own category. And then over the years, Leonardo has really started to bring this back together. So while scholarly work became hyper-focused on one discipline or another, the natural curiosity of the other was practiced in silos and created a network of connections. So our founder, who's a rocket scientist, his name is Frank Molina, he set out to bridge the network together through a popular medium at the time, which happened to be the academic journal in 1968. In his work as an engineer, Molina had access to an abundance of periodicals and peers that had given to the field to really kind of help support each other and connect in between engineering and astrophysics and art, and created these important new developments. And so he felt that at that time there was a critical need to move this over into a platform of discourse that everybody could be able to move forward with internationally. Next slide. So Frank Molina was also an artist. So he was both an astrophysicist, was one of the creators of jet fuel. And then there's a reverb. I don't know where that came from. He was one of the creators of jet fuel, and also started the Jet Propulsion Laboratory with NASA. But he really understood the importance of the creative abilities inside of the science disciplines. Next slide. So fast forward to today. Leonardo has evolved over time. In its origins, we were working primarily in print, but today there are many other aspects of Leonardo. It's not just journal itself. Next slide, which is now in its 50th year. What Leonardo is really known for today is its full organization, the International Society for Arts, Sciences, and Technology. And I want to emphasize the international word in this. This is our organization. In the early 1980s, Roger Molina, who's the son of Frank Molina, had started the actual organization, which we're umbrellaed over, as an understanding that it's not just about us publishing in one medium, but it's about us creating a network or a platform for dialogue and discourse, and that we need to have this conversation not in one country and not in one discipline, but all over the world. So it's critical to us that we elevate voices from Mexico, from Uruguay, from Bologna, from New York City, from Australia, that all these voices on a global level can be connected together. And this is where Leonardo, the International Society of Art, Sciences, and Technology, comes into play, emphasizing the word society as a network, as a community, as a movement. Next slide. So over the years, we've moved just not just with our core publication, Leonardo Journal, but we have other publications. We have a music journal in print. We have a book series, and then we have a lot of open access material that comes out monthly, sometimes annually. I encourage you guys to look at our other publications. We also have an artist and scientist residency where we bring together 6 artists and 6 scientists to live together for 1 month out of the year. We have our international speaker series called Leonardo Art Science Evening Rendezvous, which is now in 30 cities around the world, which is a decentralized network of talks. And then we do community gatherings, different conferences and festivals and online, where we bring everybody together to connect and discourse. So how do we do this? How does actually Leonardo function? We don't do anything alone. Everything that we do is through partnerships. So just an example of who we connect with. We're not discriminatory against who we want to collaborate with. Everyone who wants to connect with us has something to contribute. We survive on a gift-giving economy. So we bring together scholars, theorists, change makers, universities, artists, labs, governments. So this is really a more of a community effort, and Leonardo doesn't see itself in the middle, but we see ourselves as sort of the thread that ties this fabric together. Some of our main partners who we work with on a daily basis, just to give you a sense of that, is a lot of our publications go through MIT Press. This is who you would be working with if you wanted to actually subscribe to any of the Leonardo publications. We also work annually with ACM SIGGRAPH, the largest computer imaging conference that has conferences in all over the world and chapters all over the world. The University of Texas at Dallas, where our executive editor, Roger Molina, resides, and we work with his team to help build our aggregator platform called Arteca. We're supported in part by the National Endowment for the Arts. It's a government-funded agency that helps support our residency. And then we work with our residency with the Jurassic Resident Artist Program in California. And then most importantly, we work with a lot of our laser hosts, which are in 30 different cities around the world, who are really about how we build our grassroots community, our grassroots movement. Their communities that they work with feed back into the Leonardo community, and we connect everyone together. And then our Leonardo affiliate members, and these are our top institutions around the world who work with us closely, who we support through programs and opportunities, and we see as part of our core collaborative network. Sorry. So I want to talk a little bit about Cybernetics Serendipity. So I want to give you a little sense of hold on a second. I want to give you a little sense of where a lot of this started from. So in the late 1960s, there was a big movement of computer art, and there was a movement of where IBM, Nokia Bell Labs, Frank Oppenheimer, Frank Molina all started to gather together and create a lot of what we understand now is contemporary new media art. This started as a pivotal moment with this with the exhibition called Cybernetics Serendipity, which was at the London ICA in 1968, around the same time that we were founded. But this same sort of questions that came out of this particular exhibition are still really relevant today. You can go on to the next slide. So one of the interesting questions that came out of this is, as a scholar wrote, is how does media art deal with its own history and the underlying socioeconomic forces that render it possible? I really think about this question a lot because this was a question that was written around 1968 and looking at how is this relevant? And now we are 50 years later, and this question, we can still ask this today in the same context, and in, looking at technology and art and science and art, engineering and art. How do we actually think about that? So I'm not going to necessarily answer this question, but I want to lay this out there as a foundation to start to think about as we look at the way that we are connecting with society, with culture, with social issues. This is something that all the artists and scholars and scientists that we work with are addressing on a daily basis. So as I've been mentioning, Leonardo is in its 50th year, and we actually have been celebrating all around the world so far, I think today makes about 21 international events. I think in total, we're going to have 27 international events. And this has been a really amazing and humbling moment for us, where we started to see partners from all over the world connect with us because we connected with them. And what this means to us looking at these global events is not just to celebrate Leonardo. I'm actually not as interested in that. What this is to celebrate and understand and listen to what these dispersed communities are doing in their own environments, around the topics they are interested in. Some of these events have been connected to festivals that are around issues around biocreation and peace. Some are specifically geared towards celebrating just Leonardo with a cake and a reception and just community building. And some are about building critical discourse, focusing around the topics of Leonardo's mission. And today we're going to talk about two of the different events that really focused on really building that core Leonardo community in their own regions. Next. Go ahead, next. So I'm going to introduce these different speakers, but before they speak, I'm going to just show who they are, and then I'm going to pull out a couple questions. So last July, we worked with Pier Luigi Capucci, who is a theorist, writer, professor in Bologna, Italy, who had this idea of bringing together not just the Leonardo network, but another critical network, which was the Yasmin network, based in the Mediterranean. And from last July, he brought the Yasmin network and the Leonardo network together to really have deep dialogue and discourse around transdisciplinary art and science in an event called Art, Science, History, and New. And I'm going to let him talk more about that in a minute, but I just want to lay that out there in the context of what this particular event meant for Leonardo. And then also I encourage you to look at his bio online, because he has a lot of very interesting contributions to the new media world in art and in theory and history. And the next, after Pier Luigi speaks, I would like to introduce Dr. Luz Maria Sánchez, who is a professor, a transdisciplinary artist, a researcher, an academic at UAM in DF in Mexico City. And in a couple months ago, in April, UAM and then UNAM, the other big university in Mexico City, came together to put to a day of discourse and dialogue for the Latin American region around what Leonardo's participation and contribution may be for that. And I'm going to let her go into more details about what were some of the outcomes from that particular event, and sort of where her community in that region has developed or is thinking of going forward into. So do I have now Luz and Pierluigi on the call with me now? Okay, I think you're both in here. So I want to make sure you guys are unmuted. So I'm going to unmute you guys. Or I don't think I can unmute you. Maybe Luz, Delma, you can unmute them both. I'd like to ask you a couple questions before we get started. So, I see you are, okay, Luz is unmuted, but Pierluigi, if you can unmute yourself too, that would be great. So the first question that I have for you is how do you imagine the future of transdisciplinary practice? So maybe we can start with Pierluigi, if you want to respond to that question.
Okay. Hi, Danielle. Hi, all. Thank you for inviting me. It's a great magazine, and the cultures of Leonardo and the relation between art and science are very important for us. So to get to your question, normally I see when I read the curriculum of artists and theorists, the word interdisciplinarity or multidisciplinary, but maybe the idea of is more correct, because the first one is mainly about, maybe I can show slide. Just a moment. Just a moment. Can you see it? Do you see it?
No.
No. Shared my.
Yeah, we can share your presentation.
Yeah, but anyway, transdisciplinary is an idea complex and interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, because it goes beyond discipline. And for instance, there is a mathematical metaphor that can explain the difference between multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary. The mathematical metaphor is multidisciplinary. 2 and 2 are 4. It is a classic mathematical addition. And the food metaphor is salad, because in the salad you add the ingredient, and this ingredient remains separate. Interdisciplinary instead is more synergistic, and in this the sum. Big 2 and 2 eyes. For instance, the food metaphor is goes beyond, because the career process is construction of some kind of synthesis of disciplines. So to get metaphor 2 and 2 are is yeah. So it means going back to classic, typical mathematical realm. And the food metaphor is the cake. Transdisciplinary is not important to make collaborate the different disciplines, but also in the educational realm, because we have to have in mind that the first, this term was introduced in 1970 by Jean Piaget. Jean Piaget has been a figure in the field of education. So this means that what you get working in a transdisciplinary way is more. Is much more than a sum, much more than what you think, and it goes in different realms. So, getting to your question, transdisciplinary means that, for instance, art and science have to collaborate in deep, but this deep doesn't mean that art as just a of simply a communication, but that art can generate in science acquisition reciprocally. But and sorry, can get for science.
Okay, thank you. You're breaking a little bit up during that, so I apologize if I didn't get every word in there. And I do actually just recognize some of the time, so I'm actually going to ask Dr. Luz if you wanted to respond to that, and then what I think we will do, because I want to give time for both of your presentations, is after you respond, we'll come back to Pier Luigi, who will present some more of his findings, and then we will work on it with you, because I noticed that it's almost 1/2 hour.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to say thank you to Delma and of course Danielle and Pier Luigi. How are you all? I'm very happy to be here and to be able to share some of our work with the Leonardo Network. And well, just to keep on with the program and trying to answer your question, well, I think how we're going to imagine this future of a transdisciplinary practice, I really think that it has to be through arts and creative approaches and working within certain communities in a one-to-one, a very human scale, I think that could be some of the answers, or at least the answer we can offer from our experience. When we come back with our own spaces to talk about our work, I will talk about our university and how we're dealing with this. But I think it has to be through the arts for sure.
That's interesting. I think these are very, very critical perspectives of this. I like to. There are so many things I could ask you right now, but I want to make sure I give this right space. So what we'll do right now is I'm going to shift it back over to Pier Luigi. Pier, the audio, just to let you know, we're having some trouble with it. So I may flag you if I can't hear you. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. My voice.
Go ahead.
Voice. Yes. Okay. Great. Mm-hmm. So I can present what we have done last year for Leonardo shortly. Well, we have a celebration. I have to say that a great importance in our event was a great merit was by Nina Xegledi. Nina Xegledi, who is in the board of Leonardo and a UNESCO person and a teacher, that asked me, why don't you do anything in Italy on Leonardo? Of course, I knew Leonardo from a long time. So we invented this conference. It was a good conference, a big conference for us, more than 30 participants. And the topic that we gave to this conference was the new end history, that in some way it mirrors the idea of the next 50 years of Leonardo, because Leonardo has a great history and I think also a great future, but also perfectly fits in a reality, in a culture like the Italian one, that everybody knows that has a great cultural heritage. And this means that this cultural heritage, like that is in Italy, but also in many European nations, and I think worldwide, can be revamped through new technologies, new media, and through sciences. So the idea was to reflect about this. The third topic was about a discussion that is mainly in the States, but that it started spreading. That is called sometimes from stand to STEAM. That means from science, technology, engineering, and mathematics to STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts and mathematics, integrating the art in this curriculum. I think this is very important. Just this week, I got this very interesting conference with you all, and today I had another conference in the afternoon in the Joint Research Center, European Joint Research Center. The GRCs are 6 in all Europe and make research, scientific research. This is the second year that the instructors have understood the importance of integrating art inside their work. And so the event that put together about 30 artists that are selected and that collaborate with the researchers and scientists that are in this center, putting together in this week, because this event lasted 1 week, and then the outcome will be put in a catalog and exhibition in Italy. So in some way, this idea of from stand to STEAM is that, for instance, Roger Malina is fostering, is sustaining a lot, has come also also here, and I'm very glad to participate to this kind of event. As we have also a collaboration with Yasmin. Can you hear me? With Yasmin. Yasmin is an important mailing list about our science in the Mediterranean Rim, and we had a discussion on the topic of the Leonardo 50 event last year. On the topic, I involved people from all the Mediterranean Rim, from Tunisia, from the Balkanic Peninsula, from Italy, of course, from France, and so on. I'd like that this kind of appointment could be annual, yearly. We can hear about this topic, for instance, starting a 3-year program about climate change, and is main. I'm talking very. My voice doesn't.
Sorry. Can you repeat it? You cut out. Can you repeat what you just said?
I answer be will be climate change, art and climate change, because a great climate change that is a complex that involves globally all the world. Climate change is local and global, and it changes the economy, the populations that affect. And we have a program on this topic, a 3-year program on climate change. Maybe if you want, I can present my presentation, but I to your other hobby if you want.
Yeah, so you cut out a little bit at the end there, but I think you asked about sharing the presentation.
So I go on presenting.
Yeah, so I'm gonna okay. I think 1 second here. So we're having some technical difficulties, Pier Luigi, with your audio. So I think this is what we're going to try to do is they're going to try to solve this, but I'm going to apologies. I'm going to switch over to Luz first while they solve some of the sound issues, because you cut out a lot at the end. I hope that's okay with you. So we'll just reverse this a little bit.
Yes.
We'll get to all of it, but you know, Dr. Luz Maria Sánchez, do you want to share a little bit more about what you're working on and about what you worked on the 19th, and also with the university collaborations that are happening with you?
Yes, I'll be happy to. And I'm going to share my screen then, so we can also check on the presentation that I prepared. And basically, I try to build everything around this first question that you posed, Danielle. I think it's a really open one and allows us for trying to imagine. I think the word imagination is the key word here, and transdisciplinary practice. What I prepared at the beginning was like an overview of what the U.A.M is here in Mexico and how we work. What's our present? That was one of the main areas of my presentation. And then I wanted to talk about how we are actually working in transdisciplinary ways through U.A.M and its different divisions. And also maybe talking about what the future could be. And it's something that we're working now, that we are imagining together, and then we're trying to put together through our university, these are just ideas, but it's a really nice time here in U.A because we're really imagining, really trying to put together some projects and go forward. Well, I wanted to share how the logo of our university is built, because it's a university that is based on a tradition, of course, but it is open, it is flexible, and one of the main aspects of the university is that it's interdisciplinary and autonomous, and the motto is house open to time. And then I'm going to share some numbers about the university, but just to say that this is the second public university on the rankings of higher education in Mexico. And it was founded in 1974. And since the beginning, it had this multidisciplinary perspective. Has 5 campuses. I work in Lerma, and the last one, but it has Azcapotzalco, Coajimalpa, Iztapalapa, Xochimilco. For the ones that can see video, you can see more or less in Mexico City where they are based. And I have the site of our university on the bottom of each one of these slides. And we have different divisions, academic divisions. And so the idea here is that digital arts and all the creative work is going to try to cross around all the different divisions of knowledge that we have in the university. One of the main issues about this university, about U.A, is that it's focused on solving social problems. I think that is one of the main specifics. And in the case of U.A Lerma, where is the campus that I'm based in, is transdisciplinarity and this kind of a modular system. And so we have research, yes, but we do have creation. We teach, we have duty with the university as teachers and professors. And well, here's some more numbers that I wanted to share with you. But the artistic and humanistic fields of expertise, they go with other scientific and technological fields. Just to talk about the areas that we develop here at the U.A in general, what we have from sciences to social sciences to arts and culture, etc., etc., etc. And so one other thing that I wanted to share with you is about how we work here in Lerma, in this kind of a small campus. We have 3 divisions. We have social sciences and humanities. We have biological sciences and health, and basic sciences and engineering. We do have a digital art and communications undergrad program, and we have an MA and a PhD in social sciences with a major in digital arts. And one of the things I want to really share with you about how we work with students, some of the students were at the Leonardo 50th anniversary when we did this in April 19 of this year. We have 3 tracks. We have the methodological track, which is the creative one. We have the theoretical track, and then we have the technological track. And all these 3 tracks where the student gets his knowledge and his abilities or her abilities, it comes together in an integrative track or a creative output. And so that's one of the things that Nina Ziglevi and Roger Molina were able to witness when they were here in Mexico. We have these exhibitions of digital arts with students, which are undergrad students, not grad students, and that makes us also very special with that. And well, of course, all our professors are professional artists as well, so we have exhibitions, publications. These are some of our collection of publications that we would just launch 2 years ago. And well, we collaborate with all the other divisions in this campus. And so I come back to the question, how do we imagine the future of transdisciplinary practice? And so what we're going to try to do, we're trying to imagine how to do it. And at least for this, I think the collaboration with Leonardo and the Society for Arts and Sciences and Technology.
Could you talk more slowly, please?
Oh,
sorry.
yeah.
Sorry, Luz, for the interruption. Could you talk more slowly, please?
Yeah. So
thank you for the interpreters. Thank you so much.
And so what we're trying to imagine now is how can we use all these resources that UAM has as an institution to have a strategy that maximizes all that? And so we have our task now is how to imagine, how we redesign and rethink all these parameters where transdisciplinary practices at its core are existent resources, how we're going to make it better. We're convinced that we need to integrate the citizen. I think the 21st century is not just about sciences and arts, but about the general public. The individual should be part of this equation. And with all that, we may be able to imagine new ways. And so this is where we're standing now, and it's like a really a challenge. It's a great challenge to be part of, and well, these are just some of the elements that we're thinking they should be part of this equation. This kind of a hub about arts and sciences, humanities, citizenship, and finally, I'm going to share just some images about how it was experienced with Leonardo on the 19th of April. This is the closing picture. We can see there Roger and Nina with the group of students just finishing our first part of our program. Here are some of the students presenting Pichacucha with their art projects at UNAM, at C3, that they were partners with us on this. We had students from UNAM and from UAM, and also some independent art students presenting the projects. So here's just some images of it. And we had the collaboration with TV UNAM, which is a television channel of UNAM. We also had some collaborations with, of course, Radio UAM and in general. And our students were making this kind of different interviews with every one of our guests. So we can have a repository of interviews, really basic interviews of what art and sciences and how can we imagine this crisscrossing on the future. So basically, this is what I wanted to share with you. And I don't know, maybe from here we can keep on talking.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting way that you're approaching the program. I think that you mentioned something that I find incredibly important, and that's the idea of citizenship. Because ultimately, anybody who is going into sort of any education format is going to be contributing to the world in some way. And it doesn't matter if they're coming from medicine or art or engineering, every single human is a citizen, right? And then sort of putting that umbrella on there is really critical. So because of time, I want to actually move back over to Pier Luigi if he's ready. Are you ready?
Since it is a very poor connection, because I am in a zone that is not get well with the internet, maybe I can try to share anything if you want. Yes, but can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Yes,
okay,
I think maybe it's good that you have the video off, and then you can share some of your thoughts. And then if Delma has your presentation, maybe that could get shared over on this side. But it helps that the video was off for bandwidth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So great. Great. Maybe we can skip the first slide. I have already talked about them and about Leonardo 50. Present a little bit my research. The red slides, because the affair between art and things that today it is very important to see, to watch through the eyes of arts, and in my idea, there are many technologies. I try to. Okay, may you see the screen? May you see the screen?
We see the screen, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So there are many technologies that I put in the slides. The important thing is that just there are many technologies that are biology based, so that are tied to the organic realm. For instance, biotechnology, genetic and synthetic robotics, and so on. And see that.
Sorry, you're kind of you completely cut out.
Okay. So I don't know. May I hear me? May you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it is very difficult to get in touch. So I can say just a few things. Okay. That I am working on a research that is called the third life. I have presented this research in Australia, in South Africa, in Moscow, in Turkey, in April, and also in Europe. That is about the life forms that human culture is creating. All the seen in my school are dealing with organism or also entities that behave like the living. And so the idea is that we are overcoming the where technology and of sciences, and we are going where all these extensions will power and behave more like living organism, living entities. And this idea is the research that is last year. I have been working on since.
Okay, so Pierluigi, may I suggest something because you did cut out for the second half of that. I definitely want to make sure you have a lot of ability to input, but maybe perhaps what you could do is you could put some of it into the chat, and then I could share out what you mentioned, because the connection that is very foggy. Often it cuts out the second half of what you say. So if you want to add it into the chat, then I can repeat it for everyone, because otherwise I'm not able to follow. I don't think anyone else is either.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. So, but anyway, in the presentations that I sent to Delma, this part are present. So maybe she can show it. But
yeah,
anyway, presented what the meaning of here. So.
Yeah, so let's do this. Okay, so we're running out of time. We have 10 minutes till, but I will say that for everybody who's in this conference call, we can send this out in the emails as well. Is that Pierluigi authored a very beautiful report about this, and if you don't mind, if we share that link with everybody, If you want to send it for the history and now, that people can see that, and we can also put up the slides that you had. But we want to make sure that we have some room for questions and answers. And if there's opportunity afterwards, if people don't have to rush off, we can have more of a dialogue. It's in such a short hour with the translations. I wish we could talk forever, but we are running out of time. So if that's okay with you, does anyone from the audience have some burning questions for anybody, any of the presenters? So I'm looking in the chat room. So I think that I'm not sure who's translating or who's adding, but, and I also opened this up also Pier, Luigi, and Luz, if you have questions that you want to actually also put out there to the group, we can do that as well. Okay, so here's a good question from Isabel Pedraza. How can I participate? That's a really good question. So there's a lot of different avenues to get involved in this dialogue and this discussion. We have events all over the world, and if you wanted to put up the last slide or the second to the last slide from my presentation, if you go on to the Leonardo website, leonardo.info 50th anniversary, and I shall put it into the chat. There are a few different ways that you can participate there. One is attend any of the different events. We have a few events that even aren't listed on there. We'll be in China in September and Linz in September as well. And then we'll have a couple more U.S. events happening in October. But our culmination event, our flagship event, is going to be in San Francisco, November 3rd through 4th. And this is a convening of minds around some of this discourse that is it's not a conference, it's not a festival, but it's a day of experiences that are about transdisciplinary practice. And then it's a day of future casting and vision planning, not just for Leonardo, but for a movement. If we looked at what's happening in your communities as a movement, that's what that's for. And then there's another way to participate with our Project Delphi, which is basically starting with some simple questions, including one of those questions being, what questions should we ask? Okay, so here's another question. Could you mention the most important features or skills regarding collaborative work? I'm going to put that over to Luz and Pierluigi. Do you have a response to that? What are some important features or skills that you need for collaborative work?
Well, I would say communication skills, to be able to negotiate, because everybody from their field, they come with a set of training and knowledge and, abilities that each one of us take for granted. And maybe for the other person from that other discipline or that other area of knowledge, it's not something that they take for granted as well. So, we need to come to a common ground and negotiate from zero. I think that will be the most valuable skill, I will say, to be able to dialogue. But to dialogue for sure. I mean, not just monologue with another monologue, confrontational wise, but really to go in horizontal and trying to talk and get into an agreement. This is difficult, but I think that would be the best.
Pierluigi, do you have a response to that?
Yes, agree with Lucy. I think that education is not fostering this kind of working, and I remember what Roger Marina said some times ago. In general, artists are considered as individuals, and individuality in the art is most important. individuals. But why not to think that instead of having artists, having teams of people that can get to goals, not alone in group. It is very important communication. Also, all that work between that have to be fostered.
Okay, you cut out there at the end there. Sorry, you cut
Sorry?
off again. You cut out at the second half of that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So,
go ahead.
Okay. It is very important also to foster and to award a group of artists, group of people that are achieving the goal, and not just one artist or one scientist. Today, the knowledge is achieved through group of people. And I think that in the future will be so more and more.
So I think one of the things that Luigi mentioned, and this is something very true, is like looking at groups of people rather than individuals. And we don't live in a day and the age where we're honoring one, where we're looking for that one genius. We're looking for genius teams of genius groups, and I see this trend happening more and more. In fact, this is where our direction we're going into, and this is why our network is really important, because we work with just really intelligent people all over the world coming together with that ability to have that hive mind. I'm going to move on to this next question from Karina Villamizar from the Universidad Popular de Cesar. And she asks, is art a science? Or is there science in art? I think that's sort of almost a chicken and the egg type of question, but any responses to that? Luz, you're okay. Go ahead.
No, please.
Now with this crossing of sciences and art, actually, the artist has to have some knowledge about certain disciplines. I mean, the artist has to have knowledge of its own technology, of its own, what he's going to use in the making of his artwork. And now that also art is in the core of the universities as research, as creative research, it has to have some grounds. It's not just about this kind of romantic idea of making art. So I think there's a lot of science in art. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to move on to this last question because I know we're running close to time. This is from Zara Misra. How do you deal with respect of issues arising in communication with different disciplines come into contact as opposed to equal collaboration? So she says there's always an animosity between artists and scientists in collaboration, and sometimes communication is not the only thing that works. I think that's a very important point. And one of the things that I always encourage people to do when going into any sort of collaboration, one is to remove all the prejudice and assumptions out of the way, because a lot of people coming into any interest in collaboration, to do it authentically, you have to have a different perception of who you're working with, and that humility, the ability to also be humble and understand that even though your entire life may be focused on one aspect of research, don't take that too seriously when you start collaborating. Allow for that humility to be there, and then time and patience. I think one of the biggest things is that a lot of people don't realize is that none of this stuff is instant. And it's not like you're going to walk into a room and be like, oh, hey, astrophysicists, let's go talk about blah, blah, blah. Or, you have to realize that it takes time, and it takes trust, and you have to be humble. You have to be willing to, throw away what your preconceived ideas of what that other person does or what you do even. I don't know if anyone else has a comment on that. Okay. All right. So if I answered that right, Julia Cordosa asks, how do you manage new projects, for example, inception or application? I also think that's sort of a working method too, right? And it's going to depend culturally. I don't think that the same way that somebody approaches a project in Mexico or in South Africa is the same that they would approach it here in this in the San Francisco. I can just speak from San Francisco. The design thinking and empathy and design is a really core thing to doing any sort of project, and it's where you start with. It's what you start with, and move backwards from there. But I don't know how do you handle this in Mexico?
Well, as you said, it all depends on the situation, what kind of project it is, and if it's coming from one person, and then we need to find other kind of liaisons in order to make a network, or if it comes already from a group of people, if it's just about looking for fundraising first, or it all depends. But I think each case is a different approach. Each one needs its own thinking.
So I'm getting the flag up for wrap up time, but we could talk about this quite a bit more. So I encourage you all to come see us in person, or just we could do another video conference. And Delma is like seriously the queen of this, and I don't know how she does this. It's amazing, and it's just like this is the second one I've participated in with the interpreters. But I want to thank Dr. Maria Sánchez and Pier Luigi Capucci and everybody else who's participated and been part of this. This has been a really great conversation, and I'm going to hand it over to Delma Rodriguez from Unidad Cultural, who's going to say a few words. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me, Daniela at leonardo.info. Go to leonardo.info to get more information. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. I would like to thank to Luz, Pierre, all organization of Leonardo, and especially for our partners in CUDI and CESU in Uruguay. And I would like to mention the simultaneous interpreters, Rodrigo Machado, Rosana Fernández, Romina Díaz, Emilia Blanc, Analia Britos, Lucía Pérez, Elena Balestrino, Catalina Capelletti, Edilson Teixeira, Alejandro Soto, and especially thanks to the coordinator and teacher, Federico Brum and Alejandra Perez Faverio. Thank you very much for this first session, and we hope that all are connected in the next session, 27 July. Thank you so much.
Okay. Gracias.
Gracias. Chao.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye.
Ciao.